Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. On my last episode, I touched base on postpartum depression, and I talked about basically the mother and the woman's perspective, among other things. And I did some more research and stuff and printed out some more information. And this episode is going to be basically a significant other or spouse's guide to understanding about postpartum depression. And I'm hoping that in doing so with this podcast, it might bring a little bit more understanding and maybe shine some light, if you will, in the direction of a mother who is going through a lot of changes and stuff and suffering from postpartum depression. I know a lot of people that I have come across basically have a misunderstanding about what postpartum depression is, and that it's just a common thing of depression. It's no big deal, get over it. And, it's just stuff to do with your hormones and it all ease out and stuff. But that's not always the case. And sometimes postpartum depression can actually be very, very dangerous and deadly for the mother, family members, the baby, and a variety of other people and things. So, this episode, we're going to talk about, like I said, the spouses or the significant other's guide to understanding postpartum. And I say significant other spouses because I know in today's time it's not always about a married couple traditional. I do know that there are a lot of diversity in babies and having relationships and families and stuff. So I'm in anything that I talk about when I say spouse, please note that I mean just in general of the person that is not the biological mother, whoever, regardless of who that may be. So no discrimination or judgment on being specific. I'm not trying to offend anybody by my words. So usually I free mic things here lately, though I have been trying to pick out topics that I think are beneficial to people and also things that actually help me as well. I know in my last podcast when I talked about postpartum, I opened up about a few things in my own family, my own livelihood, um, very personal things, obviously. But if you've listened to my podcast before, you know I'm very candid, I'm very open, very honest with myself on, or try to be. But I broke down crying several podcasts, so I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This is life, this is me. And I am just trying to help and be informative to as many people as possible, if even just myself. So, with that, I'm going to get on with this podcast. This one here I took from psychcentral.com. I've gotten a lot of information from this site here lately. It's a very informative site. If you haven't been on there, feel free to do so. Like I said, it's got a lot of information on there. That is what I got this from. It was medically reviewed by Janet Brito and by Kathy Lovering. It was updated on November 15th, 2021. Again, this on psychcentral.com. And I'm going to read this as we go, so we're going to be learning this together because I have not looked at this at all. Um, or read it. Sometimes I skim through them, but we're going to do this together. So, anyway, it says postpartum depression affects many new parents. Spouses can spot the signs of this condition and support their partner to get help. New parents commonly expect changes in how they feel when a new baby arrives, but not everyone anticipates the mental health challenges that can come during pregnancy and after giving birth. Spouses of those with postpartum depression and other uh, parental mood disorders, perinatal mood disorders may feel particularly lost. It may be hard to know if your spouse is going through the baby blues, which can last for just a short time, or living with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. So, like a lot of times, and I talked about this in my last podcast, baby blues and postpartum are not they're not the same thing, and a lot of people get those mixed up. Postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis. It's a lot more severe form of depression. And if you already are suffering depression on top of getting postpartum depression, it's like a double whammy actually. And like I said, it can be very dangerous and deadly. It can help to learn more about these mental health conditions, possible symptoms, and steps you can take to support your spouse and family. Um, what are perinatal mood disorders? New or soon to be parents may experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, especially if it's your first child. When they happen during pregnancy or within a year of giving birth, it's called perinatal. Perinatal conditions include prenatal depression, which is depression before giving birth. Postpartum depression is depression after giving birth. Prenatal anxiety is anxiety before giving birth. And postpartum anxiety is anxiety after giving birth. you can you may have heard the term postpartum depression before your spouse's pregnancy, but many people also experience anxiety during this time. Sometimes anxiety and depression happen all at once. I know, especially if you're a first time parent. Um, I mean, me for example, there's a lot of emotions going on there, a lot of uncertainty. I know I've heard of people saying, that um, they're trying to prepare and they're trying to have enough money and have things in order and this. And honestly, I have learned you never have enough money to have a child. Especially kids today. They're very expensive. Life is very expensive now. It's nothing like it used to be back when I was younger, or obviously when my mother was younger and went up 10 foot of a hill barefoot in the snow, or however that story went. I'm sure a lot of us had heard. Makes you wonder where that hill went to. So, anyway, um, perinatal mood disorders are different from mild emotional changes that come with pregnancy. These conditions have symptoms that are more severe and last 2 weeks or more. What causes postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety? Doctors don't know for sure what causes them, but they suspect it may have to do with hormonal changes during and after your pregnancy. When you have a baby, there is so much going on there. Your hormones are everywhere, your body is everywhere, your emotions are everywhere. There's a lot going on there, and for all these months, you have been carrying this little human being in your life that you have been responsible for maintaining and ensuring its safety and its nutrition and a bunch of other stuff. And then when you're handed this little bundle of joy, um, reality sets in. It's not just this little big belly anymore. It's this little human being. And all kinds of emotions can come from everywhere. And now I understand that while this is talking about postpartum for women and understanding in that and looking out for it, it doesn't mean that guys cannot develop some type of anxiety as well, of course, and among other things. Although it's not necessarily their hormones that are all out of whack in their bodies, there's a lot of other emotions that come into play with being a parent. A lot of responsibilities and a lot of different things that may play on their minds and also affect the relationship between the two. So there's a lot to look out for, obviously, with that. While your spouse is pregnant, their body has high levels of estrogen and progesterone. After giving birth, those hormones levels go back to what they were before pregnancy within 24 hours. Researchers hypothesize this may cause some experience depression. A drop in thyroid levels may also contribute to depression symptoms. These changes are in addition to common experiences that new parents have, such as exhaustion and stress, and often come with caring for a newborn. Some people are more likely to experience postpartum. This includes people who may have a history of depression or anxiety. Like I said, if you've already got depression, anxiety, or a lot of things going on, this is kind of a double whammy for you, and it can be very, very serious. Experience a high risk or complicated pregnancy, or lack of social support. You might be a single mother, or you might not have any support from your family. Maybe, it's the pregnancy is not as exciting and happy, if you will, from certain people. And that can leave a big, huge mark on a person as well. Maybe somebody making them feel guilty, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of mixed things in there. Research shows a link between partner pregnancy and spousal depression and anxiety. What are the signs and symptoms, and what to look for? There are symptoms that may include your spouse is experiencing perinatal mood disorder. The signs are more severe than the baby blues, which may include weepiness, sadness, irritability, and anxiety. These often last 1 to 3 weeks, but in the cause of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, the symptoms can continue. Symptoms of postpartum depression include persistent sadness, feelings of guilt or hopelessness, loss of interest in enjoyable activities, low energy or fatigue, trouble sleeping, and also if you're sleep deprived, that also adds to a lot of psychosis, mental, um, different types of things going on with your mental stability, hallucinations or different types of variety of things if you get a big, tremendous lack of sleep. Because if your brain can't rest, then it can't heal and it can't, basically reboot, if you will. Physical aches and pains with no known cause, abnormal appetite, persistent doubts about ability to care for your baby, and thoughts of suicide or harming yourself or the baby. Symptoms of postpartum anxiety include lightheaded, easy word to say here, lightheadedness or dizziness, restlessness and inability to sit still, faster breathing, irregular or fast heartbeat, sweating, nausea, inability to sleep, panic attacks, feeling tense or nervous, excessive worrying or rumination. So this sounds a lot like, I mean, common to a lot of people. But honestly, um, when your hormones are all in whack and your a lot is hormones. And I'm not saying it's all based on hormones, but there's a lot there. So if you add all of these signs and symptoms on top of already what you're already facing in life, and if you're like me, um, and a lot of other people I know, you have other health and mental things that you got going on yourself already. So that obviously comes into play as well. There's a lot of factors that come in. So there's a lot really to look out for and to watch for, and how to know the difference between one and the other in itself can make you mind boggled. Sometimes spouses can see these symptoms, but other times new parents hide what they're feeling, and they don't open up about emotional changes even with their partners. They may feel ashamed. They may feel embarrassed. They may feel like, guilty, or they shouldn't be feeling this way, uncertainty. There's a lot of mixed emotions on how to explain how you feel, especially to your significant other with whom you just had this beautiful little bundle of joy with. And maybe one parent um, is ecstatic about the child and this, that, and the other, while the other parent is kind of, going through a lot of mixed emotions and don't really know how to handle it yet. So then the two don't really meet and coincide with each other so smoothly. And that in itself can cause a lot of situations. So, how long does postpartum last? It's not uncommon to experience mood changes the first few days after birth, but these symptoms usually resolve on their own within the first 2 weeks after birth. When these symptoms linger beyond 2 weeks and start interfering with your day to day life, you may be experiencing postpartum. Symptoms typically appear within 4 weeks after birth, but for some, they can start as early as the first 72 hours. In some cases, the symptoms may not show up until 6 months or even a year after delivery. So it doesn't discriminate on the time length. And I talked about in my last podcast that even as adults, as our children grow, um, there's a lot of mixed emotions and a lot of things. Am I? Why can't I? Reach out to my kid? Why can't I talk to them? Why? I can't provide for them. I don't understand them. We don't have much communication. There's a lot of uncertainty, or like parents. Some parents have PTSD on being a parent, because maybe the child has um, certain things that they had made the parent feel, or something. So their lack of feeling like a decent parent or a worthy parent, or a parent that um, like you have world's greatest mom and dad, but they feel like, hey, I don't deserve that title. And there's a lot of uncertainty there. So it doesn't really discriminate. And I know that's not necessarily the same thing, but I know that it can cause a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety and a lot of other mental anguish that parents go through. And there's, and even like if the parent, or, is a grandparent and the child has children, and maybe the child, withholds, or their child withholds the grandchildren from them for some reason, whatever the case may be. It causes a lot of stress too, because then they feel a certain type of way. And I know that that is not necessarily the same thing as postpartum depression, but if you add that in over the years and stuff, a lot of things can be triggered, and it's just a big old domino effect, really, in my opinion. Um, and that in itself can be overwhelming and in need of um, intervention, basically, and understanding for all parties involved, really. Um, so it says, when should the spouse start expressing some concern? It's not always easy to know how to help your spouse with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, but you can take some steps to help. As soon as you feel that there might be some change in your spouse's emotional well being, you can express your concerns in a thoughtful, supportive, and non judgmental way. Now, I say this in respect to the significant other. Um, when a woman is pregnant, and even when she's not, hormones can be through the roof, and one minute they're happy and laughing, and the next minute they're crying, or their hormone. And if you're a significant other, you already know what I'm saying. Um, when my kids were younger, my oldest daughter, she was so moody. Oh my goodness, she was so moody. And my son looked at me and he goes, "Is she always going to be this hormonal?" And I said, "Dude, you better get used to it, because this is life for you with your new wife and your child. Your children. Yes, dude, this is life." So it is a thing. So to know the difference between um, just standard normal moodiness and stuff, you also know that sometimes it's easier said than done to try to soothe and be there for your woman, because sometimes no matter what you say or do, if they're in a hormonal moment, it's not always the best road to be on. So but if you notice something that's a little out of the ordinary, or a little bit more extreme, or a little bit more concerning. I mean, obviously, depending on type of surgery they had too, sometimes they're also coming off of medication, or they're on medication. So there's that factor in as well. If they had a surgery, if they had a C-section, maybe they had to be, basically put to sleep in order to deliver, or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of trauma in that sense too, of trying the body to readjust, coming off of medication as well as everything else. As soon as you feel there might be a change in your spouse's emotional well-being, obviously you want to bring attention to it, but knowing how to approach that, again, can be kind of on the fence. But here are a few ideas that lists on ways you can do it. Start the conversation. Ask your spouse how they're doing. But I'm going to add on, be prepared for the answer. So if you're going to ask, be prepared on the answer. Um, and know that sometimes if it's difficult for them to express themselves or come forth with how they're really feeling, you might also look at their body language, because they might say, I'm good, um, I'm fine. We all know that word. Or, everything's okay, or whatever the case may be. Um, that doesn't necessarily always mean, and I'm not saying that take their body language as a total answer, but you know your significant other better than what someone else may. So knowing the signs, what to watch for, the way they say it, what they say, how they act. Not saying it's 100% all that way, because sometimes some things are misconstrued, but understanding that that's a start, but also be prepared to um, counteract the response. Tell them what you notice. Let your spouse know that you see that they're not sleeping, they're not eating, or whatever it is that you're noticing is happening, and you want to know how they're feeling. And just kind of let them know what you witnessed, but also too, there's a right way and a wrong way to say it, because obviously you want to approach this as delicate as possible and concerning, and if she reacts in a certain way, and maybe her voice might raise or might be argumentative, it's important also, in my opinion, to try to stay as level toned and as compassionate sounding as possible. Because if you escalate, the conversation is only going to escalate more and you're not going to get anywhere. Um, so say you're worried. Ask them what they're experiencing or they're feeling, and express how concerned you are for them. Promise to listen. Give your spouse the space to express what they're going through. So sometimes people just need somebody to listen. They don't need you to respond. They don't need a comeback. They just need somebody to hear them out. They need to vent. They need to get it, out and released. However, sometimes you don't know this, because sometimes they say they just want to talk, then they have nobody to talk to, or nobody understands their feelings, nobody can relate to the spouse and stuff like that, or can't understand what they're going through because it wasn't their body, and then this and that and the other. And be prepared to hear all that, but also be prepared not to respond in a defensive way, because while you may feel that you need to make a counter conversation on that and defending yourself, like, hey, I'm a new parent too, or hey, don't do that. Not that your feelings are not justified, but now is not the time. Now is the time that you're coming to them and asking them what they need, how they feel, what you can do for them. So if you go to do that, don't take it back away from them, and let it play for them the way they need it to go. Go at their pace, go at their conversation. And if they're not willing to come forth with things, everything, don't push them. Just leave the door open and say, hey, even if they don't want to have a conversation, just say, hey, the door is open. I'm shoulder, if you need to lean on it, I'm here, for you. If you want to talk, or if you just need a hug. If you need a hug, you don't have to say nothing. Just come up and, give me a hug, and I'll hold you, and or if you need me to hold you at night or whatever, feel free to roll over, and or I'll roll over and put my arms around you and hold you. And if you feel like crying, I'll hand you a tissue and I'll be here for you. Just reassure them that the door is open, even if they don't step inside. At that moment, just leave it ajar for them, so to speak, metaphorically, and let them know that you're there. And that is a big, huge um, that's a big, huge thing right there in itself, honestly, at my thought. If you're not sure if your spouse is going through postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, and you don't know how to talk to them directly, you can speak with your family doctor or your mental health profession, and they may be able to provide support or give you some ideas. They might be able to help you, um, you know, with what to watch for and different concerns and things as well. Or you might um, be a little bit more, um, like, how do I want to put this? Give them a little bit more special time to themselves. Like take the baby, go do something with the baby, or take over for the day and like do the dishes and do dinner and clean up the house and take care of the baby for a day. Kind of like take the role over for them and just give them a day of themselves and let them regroup. That might be something too, to kind of readjust for what they need. Kind of like a meditation of themselves. Ways to support your spouse. Partner support is known to help prevent perinatal depression and anxiety. Ideally, this support is reciprocal with spouses helping each other. And here are some ways you can support your spouse during their experiences with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Encourage them to talk about their feelings and seek professional help. Share the labor at home. That's just what I was saying. Take the role over a little bit, such as giving your partner a rest from caring for the baby. Seek help from family and friends for childcare, meal prep, and housework. Demonstrate emotional affection by expressing love and care for your spouse. Each partnership is different, so how you choose to show support may depend on your relationship. Consider being open to new ways to relate to one another now that your family has grown and you're all undergoing some emotional changes. So obviously, like I said, the mother's going through things, the spouse, the significant other is going through things, but then you have this little baby, and this little baby is adjusting to life. And that might sound like something that doesn't sound like a big deal because it's just a little baby. What does it have to adjust to? There's a lot. This baby was inside this little protective womb, bouncing around in this fluid, with its mom's umbilical cord, giving it nutrients and food, and now it's in this outside world, and it's just a little being, and its survival is depending on these people that have created them. And so there's a lot of adjustment with that, the baby too, different environment, different types of way of, living, basically. Um, so tips for self-care. Caring for your spouse is essential, but your health and well-being is also very important. One review found that 8% to 10% of fathers, significant others, experience symptoms of postpartum depression. Exactly what I was saying before. Even though it's not a hormonal thing, there's a lot of feelings and emotions in there as well. More men experience it within 3 to 6 months after delivery. The same review found that up to 18% of fathers reported higher levels of anxiety during this time, too. If your spouse has postpartum, you are more likely to live with the symptoms as well. So if one has it, obviously, that's going to cause a bearing on the other. And again, then that can cause conflict between the two. It can cause a lot of things. So, if you both get to this point, or if one notices it from the other, because the woman can notice it from the father. Maybe the woman's fine, but the father is struggling. So, however it may be, there might be a time in the fact that you might want to get professional opinion and professional help, maybe some type of resources, support groups, parenting classes, whatever the case may be, in order to counteract. Now, I do understand that all of this is easier said than done because when you're in that mind frame, you're not always thinking clearly. And so knowing this and doing this are not always in the same agenda. So maybe it's something that you can talk with your significant other, your spouse with prior to, and just say, hey, I know there's going to be a lot of emotions, a lot of things changing and stuff. This is kind of, if we get to this point or there's things going on, and maybe you have a conversation about it. Kind of like pre-planning, even though you can't really plan for this. And just have, conversation about it prior to when you're in a state of mind and a level state of mind that you're comfortable with, that you can make actual rational decisions, but rational emotional decisions. There are a few things and ways that you can look for after you're with yourself. Consider talking with your doctor, your nurse. They can help you connect with your mental health support and treatment if you need it. Try to eat healthy foods and exercise. Good physical health and help can help. I'm sorry, let me start that line over. Good physical health can help you manage depression. Consider practicing mindfulness and meditation. Quiet time can help you get a break from your current experience. When you take a nice hot bath, even if you're a guy, go soak in a hot bubble bath. Turn the lights down, and just, USA. You know, there's no shame in it. Try to reach out to your friends and family. They may offer practical support like childcare and give you relief from your stress. Some people, family and friends, also may have experienced this themselves, and maybe you don't know it. So they might be able to relate to it. And if you got close enough family and friends, obviously you would want to feel comfortable talking to them, because I know there's some family and friends that don't understand this level and may be judgmental to you or make you feel, more like a piece of poo, so to speak, respectfully. So knowing and how to respond to that, but also there are support groups. There are different types of counseling. There's different types of resources out there, and there's no shame in that. The best, the best responsible thing that you can do is not feeling like you're always going to have the answers, because you're not. And coming to terms with that is the first step on being a great parent. Because, and this is my opinion, I used to always tell my kids, you're entitled to your opinion, but there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. And if I am wrong, even though I'm an adult and I'm your parent, doesn't mean I'm always going to be right. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you I'm wrong if I knowingly know and feel that I'm wrong. But also, too, sometimes you got to agree to disagree, because sometimes you're just not always going to agree with one another. And that comes in relationships as well, because you're not always going to be on the same page. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be compatible. It's just you have a different opinion about something. So what one thing, and it might even go with the care of taking care of your child. One parent might have a certain way that they want this done to their kid, while another parent disagrees with that. So sometimes there has to be a compromise, and sometimes that's not always easy to do, and that in itself could cause conflict. There's a lot of factors in there. Consider open and honest communication with your spouse. Together, you can find solutions to postpartum and support each other. Most people find it helpful to admit that they're also going through new emotional experiences and also need support just like their spouse does. Um, so, also, too, when you instead of, there might be a time where you feel confident and safe enough, and I say that with respect, safe enough to talk to your significant other, your partner, as a male, or as a parental parent on the paternal side, um, and go to them like, hey, I can, do you got time to talk? Can I talk to you about a couple things? Some things that I'm kind of going through that's been on my mind. And express to them what you're going through, and maybe that might open the door up for them, as well. But and they might say, I've been having this, emotion to blah blah, blah, and then have a conversation together about it and try to think of a game solution, or it might just be something that the mother needs to hear, because maybe they're silently going through it and they don't necessarily want to say something to you, but you coming to them helps them internally, on their own level, but also too it helps. It doesn't show a sign of weakness on your end. Actually, I believe it shows a huge strength, because coming to anybody, especially your significant other, and expressing to them a vulnerability that you have on something emotional as precious as this little bundle of joy that you share, is a very, um, very responsible and very proud thing to do. I mean, it really is. There's no shame in it at all. Actually, I think it makes you more, um, you know, more positive into it, more of a, I don't really know the word to think of here. Um, it doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you a strong person. And like I said, there's no harm in that on either side. Most people, um, find it helpful to admit that they're going through things, and there are steps that you can go through. So the next steps, perinatal mood disorders happen to many people. Fortunately, they are treatable. A healthcare or mental health professional can help you support your spouse through this time. There are also organizations that can offer support, and it lists some. Postpartum progress support groups. Again, there are support groups out there, people that are going through this. The hospital might even be able to um, give you resources and stuff, or your doctor's office. Central Perinatal Excellence. Postpartum Support International. Postpartum Education for Parents. Health Resources and Services Administration. These are just some steps and different support and different resources. If you need immediate help, obviously, and if you're feeling a certain kind of way that is um, beyond your capacity and overwhelming, and you feel like you're going to hurt yourself or harm your child or hurt another, or you're feeling some type of way, there is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. 988, I say this in every podcast, 988 Suicide Prevention. Their skilled professionals definitely have the resources for you. Or you can also call them at 800 273 8255. It's 800-273-8255, or like I said, 988. Or you can text the word HOME, HOME, to the crisis text line, and that's 741-741. Another thing that I want to talk about is postpartum psychosis. We talked about postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. We're going to touch on postpartum psychosis too. This also comes from psychcentral.com. So I'm kind of like putting one spew into the other because it does intertwine each other. This was medically reviewed by Jeffrey Ditzel and Hope Gillette on April the 7th, 2021. And it is all about postpartum psychosis. Again, we're going to do this together. Postpartum psychosis is different than postpartum depression. For one, it's less common and symptoms are more severe. The intensity and seriousness of postpartum psychosis symptoms may also require immediate medical attention. Postpartum psychosis affects up to 2.6 in every 1,000 new mothers. Symptoms may appear quickly, usually 1 to 15 days after giving birth. Extreme confusion, incoherent speech, delusions, hallucinations are just some possible symptoms of postpartum psychosis. These symptoms are not present in postpartum depression. This is one of the main differences between the two conditions, which oftentimes inaccurately is confused with each other. But neither postpartum depression or psychosis is caused by something that you did or you didn't do. It's not because you did something wrong, or it's not your fault. There are mental health conditions that result from a combination of many factors. Most of them are out of your control. Both conditions can be treated and managed with a full recovery possible. Psychosis, however, may require prompt medical interventions. So, what is postpartum psychosis? In the world of mental health professionals, classification of postpartum disorders is an ongoing debate. Some experts feel these conditions deserve their own classifications and diagnostic manuals. Others believe that represent core mental health conditions that happen to appear during the postpartum period. Currently, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders uses postpartum to define when a mental health condition has appeared. And obviously, this is after birth. Post is after. Pre is before. For example, you may experience brief psychosis at any time in life. Any time in life. But when it occurs during the first 4 weeks after giving birth, it becomes postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is not the same as postpartum depression, though the both two conditions can be swift changes in mood, insomnia, and intense feelings of sadness. Unlike postpartum depression, though, when you experience postpartum psychosis, you might have one or more psychotic symptoms, such as hallucinations. And obviously, if you don't get enough sleep, that is going to add into the mix as well, because your mind needs to rest. It is very unhealthy not to sleep. This might mean that the things you think, the things you see, things you feel, things you touch, things you taste, and even things you smell feel real to you, but they're not. Um, but they're not representative of what's truly happening around you. And in other words, hallucinations can cause you to live out full events that feel very real to you, but that others in the same place don't experience. So, what's real to you might not be real to somebody else, and vice versa. And sometimes knowing the difference is almost impossible to see, and it might make you feel like you're crazy and you're losing your mind, which then that also adds to your psychosis. Like delusions, um, it can affect your thoughts, causing you to stand by beliefs that are known to be untrue. Like if you are hallucinating something and somebody else, then you're going to argue that no, this is happening, this is what's going on, even if to somebody else it's not true. And it's not saying that maybe it's not, because sometimes if people know that you're having issues or you're on a certain type of medication, something, they use it to their benefit, because some people are cruel, and they'll say, "Oh no, that's not. This is not what happened," and um, you know, or they might try to say something happened and they know it didn't, and then try to convince you that you're losing your mind, and that they're right and you're wrong, and that's a whole different level. But then again, it's not, because some people actually try to take advantage of your mental health instability situation, or however it may be, because there are people like that. Um, for instance, you may be unwavering in the belief that your grandmother was a famous actress, when in reality, she never even tried out for a role in her whole life. Um, so you might believe something was. And I'm going to say this too in respect. It might also be something you've been told all of your life too. And I know that's not the same thing, but it can play a factor in that as well, I believe, because if you're trying to tell somebody, if somebody knows you're going through something and you're telling them something, for instance, just like this, your grandmother was, this famous actress or whatever, and the other person knows that you're having a psychosis or whatever, depression, they may use it to their benefit on making you feel like craziness or whatever, and belittling you in some way, or however the case may be, when maybe in fact your whole life you have been told this. And I know that, like I said, that's a different situation, but the response from the other person on the other side, how they respond to you, and in fact, then can make you feel even crazier than what you already feel, and then play havoc on your already delicate situation. So, like I said, it's just like a big domino effect. And sometimes it also goes back on who you can trust and who you can't. But because unfortunately there are people out there that are like that, and they could be people that are in your family and friends era, whatever. So again, it is very important, if at all possible, um, to watch for signs and symptoms, but also to, if you're feeling some type of way, or if your significant other or your spouse is noticing changes, or vice versa. Um, no, like I said, know that getting help or asking for help does not make you a bad parent. It does not make you a bad human being. It does not belittle your credibility at all. If anything, I think it makes you more stronger and more heroic, actually, in my opinion. Um, when your mind cannot tell the difference between what's real and what isn't, it may lead to situations that put you and your baby's safety in jeopardy. For this reason, postpartum psychosis is a condition that requires immediate medical care. Like I said, sometimes it can get to the level that it can be really dangerous and even deadly. Um, this exact cause of postpartum psychosis is unclear, but a combination of factors may come into play. And this can include extreme hormone fluctuations, genetics, presence of an underlying mental health condition. Like I was saying, if you've already got something else going on, it's like a double whammy. Family history of mental health conditions, sleep disruptions, thyroid dysfunction, immune system dysregulation. Um, there are also some contributing factors that might increase your chances of developing postpartum psychosis. And those include you or your close relative have bipolar disorder. This is maybe your first baby. You experience depression, psychosis, or another mental health condition during your pregnancy. Symptoms of postpartum psychosis includes experiencing brain fog, confusion, disorientation. Might happen to everyone during a life-changing event, like starting a family. Um, you might feel a little disoriented, a little backwards. You don't know if you're coming or going. However, if these symptoms become persistent and you come with more severe symptoms like hallucinations, it might mean you have postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis isn't included in the DSM-5 by itself, which is the manual that I read about earlier, um, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Um, Instead, it's classified under brief psychotic disorders. Mental health professionals usually add the specificer with postpartum onset. This means that to reach a diagnosis, a mental health professional will look for symptoms of brief psychotic disorder and specifically appear during the first 4 weeks after giving birth. One or more of the following four symptoms may be present: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized or incoherent speech, behavior that's either severely disorganized or um, catas- uh, unresponsive, catatonic. Um, at least one of the first three symptoms um, of the following must be present for a postpartum psychosis diagnosed to be reached. Um, Other symptoms, common symptoms of postpartum psychosis may include euphoria, depressed mood, overactive thoughts, severe confusion, restlessness or hyperactivity, refusal to eat and rest, paranoia, anxiety, supernatural beliefs related to your baby, rapid mood changes, insomnia, unusual behaviors, irritability, secrecy about your symptoms, suicidal thoughts, and thoughts of harming your baby. Again, this is very important. And I'll say it again, the suicide hotline, 988. They also have a postpartum support international helpline. And that number is 800 944 4773. And it says to press 1 for Spanish and 2 for English. Or you can text HOME, HOME, to the crisis text line at 741 741. Or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 988 or 800 273 8255. Again, very important. And I talk about 988 in every podcast because it is uh, a very big deal. And myself, I've had several people in my life who have been suicidal or have committed suicide, have suffered postpartum psychosis and depression. Um, and also, too, I have talked about before where I am a surviving um, suicidal victim, as I like to, and a self harm victim. Um, so I am very knowledgeable on that level, unfortunately, but I can also relate to um, not necessarily what someone else is necessarily going through, but I can understand the emotion behind it. on that severity. Because when you get down to that darkness, that level of the abyss, as I call it, um, being in the right frame of mind is not where you're at. And having making decisions and being rational are not in your vocabulary. And people do not understand sometimes that a person that is suffering some type of depression or some type of mental anguish, if you will, is not so forthcoming on reaching out. And a lot of that is because they're withdrawn, or they're in a different mental formality, if you will, in their mind and their mental well being. And some people may get defensive and like, well, I've tried calling them, I've tried reaching out. They don't ever, I invite them all the time, they always decline. I've tried going over there, but they don't ever answer the door, answer their phone. And in all honesty, it's usually it might be because something's wrong. And it's not, how do I say this nicely? It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. And I say this with respect because it's their mental stability on the line. It's something they're going through, something they're battling internally. And it's not something that you're going through directly. And I say that with respect because everybody handles things and everybody goes through things at their own level, their own pace, but also too and their own severity. And what works for one might not work for another. And having a game plan, if possible, on how to de escalate yourself and how to bring yourself back. Things to calm yourself when you get into those type of levels are very important. But having a backup plan to the plan sometimes is also beneficial because what might help one time is not necessarily what's going to help the next time. And I know this for a factor to be mine. And I have many times where I have gotten into situations where I've had to de escalate myself. I've had to talk myself down. I've had to go outside at 2 o'clock in the morning, get some air, and change my scenery. I've had to um, do different things. I do the 5 4 3 2 1 technique a lot. Um, and I also found like doing my ABCs. I'll do my ABCs, and then instead of saying, "Won't you sing it with me?" I'll take a deep breath, and then I'll start again. Or I'll count, and or I'll do like the alphabet with a word, like a name. Like A for, Alabama, or A for apple, or whatever. Um, and then I'll try to go through that as best I can, or I'll try to, um, just do different factors. I'll get up and I'll try to, I do a lot of artwork and stuff. I'll come in here in my craft room and I'll start doing something, or I'll do something to counteract that moment. But also too, having good cry helps, but being able to control that good cry is the kicker of it. Because I know sometimes I'll get to crying and I don't know if I'm going to stop. And it gets so severe, I'll actually make myself, it'll make me sick. I'll start, feel like I'm going to throw up. Um, or something like that. I'll get really bad headaches and just a lot of different things. You might want to put a cool wash rag on your head, or go take a nice hot bubble bath, or something to change the moment is very important. I have found for myself anyway. But obviously, that's not always doable for somebody because, again, when you're in that frame of mind, you're not always thinking right. And one of the biggest things I do is I also pray. And I know that's not what everybody does. And I've said this before. What would it hurt? What would it really hurt? Um, to say our prayer and you reach out for strength and guidance and protection and whatever it is you're feeling. You might keep a journal. I write poetry. I'm not a big journal person, but I write poetry. Um, Obviously, I do my podcast. It gets my feelings somewhere, but also too, it's also trying to help others, which in itself is very rewarding. And it helps to raise your endorphins and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that are different things that somebody can try that might help them in this situation, but also knowing to ahead of time when you are in your right frame of mind, whenever that opportunity is, um, to seize that moment and try to think of ways ahead of time if you can. And I know that's not it is easier said than done, but it's a lot of things to think about, and that in itself can make you feel crazy. And I say that with respect because um, don't I mean you're not crazy. There's nothing to be ashamed of for feeling the way you do. Your feelings are justified. Your emotions are justified. You as a parent and a human being and as a man or as a woman is justified. So knowing, I mean, men get emotional. Men have hormones. Men have moments. Um, they do. Women go through menopause and guys go through menopause. And we all have hormones, and we all have anxiety. We all have different levels of something. Unfortunately, I can't speak for the melanin, but unfortunately, women have a huge dose of it in so many ways because it is a lot when you have a human being um, that is inside of you. Um, like you're growing this little human being. So a lot of changes and all that. So it is very important to be supportive to each other. And if you are a single parent, whether you're the male or the female, that can also add to additional um, things that you have to encounter mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. I mean, the whole scenario. So, trying to find a support group, even if it is outside of your home, of your family and your friends. So I have found that actually complete strangers are more beneficial to me than my family and friends because they're not as direct and they're less biased and less judgmental because most of the time they can relate to what you're going through. Depending on the support that you are that you need. Treatment options for postpartum psychosis. Anyone experiencing symptoms of postpartum psychosis is advised obviously to seek medical care. Reaching out to a health professional as soon as you notice the first signs can help you manage your symptoms and find coping strategies and treatments that work for you and your family. Postpartum psychosis is treatable and is fully recoverable if possible. You get full recovery if possible. I'm sorry, full recovery is possible. Of course, every person is different, so a healthcare professional will be able to help you find the options that work best for you because what works for one might not work for somebody else. These might include inpatient care for a few days. You might have to be inpatient, in a hospital or facility or something. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. Because if you look at it as you're getting help to be a better parent, a better woman, a better man, a better human being, but you're also being responsible enough for this little human being that you are going to have to um, nurture and shape and teach and grow with. And your mental health is just as important as your physical health, and it is just as important as your child's because you are pretty much one and the same until they get their own personality, and then you're in for a whole different psychosis. So anyway, medications like mood stabilizers and psychotics, psychotics, psychotherapy, lifestyle changes like improving sleep habits and getting more nutrients in your diet. Maybe working out. I know they say exercise is good for depression. Can postpartum depression turn into postpartum psychosis? It is possible for someone who experienced depression or other mental health conditions before or during pregnancy to develop postpartum psychosis. That doesn't mean this is always the case. Um, and it doesn't always mean that somebody has postpartum depression will develop psychosis. Both conditions are overlapping symptoms, but they're significantly different. Symptoms of postpartum depression are very similar to those of major depression. The difference focuses on timing. So during pregnancy or after giving birth, and on the baby being at the center of your preoccupation. Postpartum psychosis may include symptoms of depression, but it's mainly characterized by psychotic episodes that are not present in postpartum depression. Another important difference is that postpartum psychosis usually requires emergency medical help. So, your next steps in this, it says postpartum mental health conditions like psychosis and depression are treatable. With the right tools and treatment options, there is no shame in getting help. And I've said that before, there's no shame in it. So reach out to your OBGYN, your pediatrician, any other healthcare professional for support, resources, or whatever the case may be. And don't be ashamed of it. They are trained in this and they understand this all too well. This is what they're there for. Postpartum psychosis is different from postpartum depression in a number of ways. The biggest difference is the presence of severe symptoms, like I said, like delusions and hallucinations. Because of the severity and effects of these symptoms, it's recommended you seek immediate care when you first notice they appear. Like I said, this is easier said than done sometimes. Once you receive treatment for the symptoms of postpartum psychosis, full recovery is possible. Again, here's some resources that might help you take your first steps. American Psychiatric Association, find a psychiatric tool. Um, American Psychological Association, find a psychologics tool. National Alliance of Mental Health Illness Helpline and Support Tools. National Institute of Mental Health Helpline Directory. Um, so, like I said, this is a thing, and if you haven't checked out my other podcasts, again, I went over postpartum depression, obviously from other perspectives too, and I can't say this enough because it all leads to the mental stability of not only you, your significant other, your other children that you may have, your family setting, your work environment, whatever the case may be of your family situation, but this tiny little human being. And the tiny little human being is going to be, and I'm not trying to stress you out even more, very codependent on you, your well being, your mental status, first and foremost. Your financial situation, yes, it's important, but it is not what makes the family go around. Because you can take away all your materialistic things because they can be replaced. Your family, your children, your significant other, your loved ones cannot. While money does help, especially in this today's time, it does not make your family go round. Actually, in some scenarios, I think it makes your family stop because people are so materialistic, so gimme gimme, so um, non-family oriented, if you will. And I've said this before in one of my other podcasts. I saw this picture on this magazine, and it was this sectional couch, and there was a family sitting on it. It was an older woman and man, I'm guessing the grandparents, then the mom and the dad, and a boy and a girl. And the boy and the girl sitting next to each other. The mom and dad were sitting next to each other, and the grandparents were sitting next to each other. And they each had an electronic device in their hand. They were not looking at each other. They were not interacting with each other. They were not talking to each other. Every single one of them had an electronic device in their hand of some sort. They were all sitting next to each other, but they were not interacting. And I believe that, and I say this all the time, technology is our greatest strength and our biggest demise. And it is killing our families. It is killing us as human beings. It is killing us as a country, as a nation, as a global effect. And if you take all of that out of the equation of life, it's still materialistic. Your family, your loved ones, your children, your parents, your grandparents, your friends, they are not replaceable. Now, I know a lot of technology is codependent on our work and vice versa, but Instead of playing a game on your phone by yourself, whip out a board game and have family time. Do something family oriented. Instead of coloring on your phone on a coloring app, get out the coloring book and crayons and color with your kids. Because that's where it's at. And when you have other children, um, and I say this with respect, don't forget them. Because while you're um, handling whatever you're handling, they're handling without you. And sometimes we are not equipped mentally to be equipped mentally. And we are not always strong enough to reach out because sometimes we don't even realize it because we are in such a fragile level of uh, our own mental demise and our own little world. So, if at all possible, try to have a game plan ahead of time. Try to work together as a team. If you are married or have a significant other or whatever the case may be, um, whether you have children or you don't have children, you are in a relationship for a reason. And I always say you're going to have problems and issues and things to overcome in any relationship you're in. Finding the one person you want to go through all that with is the difference that it makes. So, if you have problems or concerns, obviously there are resources out there. Again, I will say 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline. Um, Very important. And like I said, I'm a suicidal surviving victim and a self harm victim, among other things. And I've talked about this in depth in a lot of my other podcasts. So I speak from experience on the dark abyss, and I speak on experience on a lot of traumas that I have endured in my life that have made me incapable of being a parent for quite a few years due to a tragedy in my life. Um, and it is a factor, it is a thing. And you take things um, of life and trauma and day to day living as a person, as a human being. Life is not handed with an instruction manual, and neither was having a relationship or having kids, and neither was being a man or a woman or whatever the case may be. Um, yeah, they might have books out there, but that doesn't mean they're always accurate, and that doesn't mean they're always pertain to the situation at hand. Because, like I said, everybody is different, and if there is a something that can explain everything verbatim and be 100% true, um, I like to know where that one's at because honestly, it does not exist. So just know that you're growing, you're learning, and you're always going to be educated. And sometimes it's the hard knocks of life. Um, but just know that sometimes you just need to shut the door and have a moment of silence. And if that's not possible in your head, then blare some music, some ACDC or something like that, and have a moment of have a concert. Give yourself a concert, and do something that you like. Do something you enjoy. Try new things. I always say if you don't try, it's 100% no. If you do try, at least it's a 50-50. But, in all honesty, um, that's not always a good thing either. Because sometimes you do try and you're made to feel that you shouldn't have. Not saying you're right or wrong. It's just the person that on the other end or the scenario on the other end might not always be so 50-50. You might be, you might try something and give it your all and put it out there, but maybe if it's not perceived and taken in a 100% way, or even a 75% way, you're still going to be made to feel like you got nowhere. If even in fact you did for yourself, you're not made to feel that way, if that makes sense. To me, it does. But anyway, I'm going to close out now. And I appreciate everybody's time. Again, I hope this helps some people. Again, reach out if at all possible, but try to be a little bit more understanding to people. I always say people are a little bit more understanding and less judgmental. This world would be a better place. So don't always think you know what everybody's situation is, even if you know what they're going through, because you don't. You're not them. Even if you have a similar situation, the way you handle it, your emotions, your well being, your background, even your way of coping is not going to be like somebody else's. There's a way to be critical on somebody, and there's a way to be compassionate, respectful criticism, if you will, without criticizing somebody. Don't make fun of people, and don't make people feel like the piece of poop between your toe that's ooey gooey and lingers on every time you walk, because that's that's a stinky situation. Nobody likes to feel like a piece of poop. So anyway, if you had taken the time out listening to me, like I always say, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, because I know that um, your time is one thing in your life that is precious and most valuable that you will never get back. And if you have taken your time out to give me some of your time to listen to me, sometimes even ramble on, I appreciate that, because I know that's a part of your life that you're not ever going to get back, and you shared it with me. So I do appreciate that. And on that note, I will close out. And if you have not checked me out on YouTube, I do have a channel on that as well. I try to save this over onto my YouTube channel as well as my Podbean app, Bean app. And I am working on doing videos soon. I'm still trying to figure all that out. So anyway, I hope everybody has a safe and blessed evening. Thank you very much. Good night.